Okay, so picture this. You're in the middle of like a really crowded street in Karachi or Dhaka.
Ah,
The smells of spices and exhaust just fill the air.
yeah, I can imagine it.
And all around you, families are like packed onto scooters, vendors are shouting about their goods, kids are like running through the
It's
crowd.
just bustling.
Yeah. And there's so much energy, but underneath it all, there's this feeling.
Like a desperation?
Exact, like people are searching for something more.
Yeah.
And for so many more happen. That something more is across oceans and borders in America.
Makes sense.
And that desperation fuels what we're looking at today. Dunki flights.
It's a term that maybe you haven't heard before,
Right.
but it's a situation that millions are facing.
So tell me about these Dunki flights. They're not the flights you see on kayak, are they?
No, these journeys are born out of necessity. They're super secret and run by these networks that are like completely outside the law.
Okay, so let's break down Dunki flights.
Hmm.
Where does the term come from and what does it really mean?
Well, the term itself is really interesting.
Yeah.
It comes from the picture of a donkey, like totally weighed down, struggling to carry a heavy load.
Oh, I see.
It's like a metaphor for the huge burden these journeys put on people.
Both physically and emotionally.
Exactly. These aren't just trips, they're more like desperate gambles.
Hmm.
People put everything on the line, their savings, sometimes even their lives.
We actually read about this young woman, Nadia, in one of the sources.
Oh, yeah, Nadia's story.
She sold her family's only cow to pay for her Dunki flight.
Wow.
It was such a tough choice for her. But she felt it was the only way to get out of poverty and make a better future.
It's heartbreaking, but sadly her story's not that unusual.
Right.
These journeys are so expensive, like tens of thousands of dollars.
That's incredible.
People have to sell everything they own, land houses, heirlooms, you name it.
Or go into huge debt.
Yeah. And it really highlights the lack of opportunities pushing people to make such risky decisions.
It's mind-blowing when you think about the logistics of these trips.
I know, right?
We're talking routes that cross continents,
Uh-huh.
often using different types of transport, fake papers, safe houses, and always that risk of being caught and sent back.
Yeah, the source talked about migrants crossing dangerous mountains at night, hiding in tiny cargo containers,
Wow.
and going on super long trips in these shaky boats.
It's a testament to how resilient they are.
And how desperate.
But the risks are huge.
One study in the source said around 3% of people trying Dunki flights don't make it.
3%? That's a massive number. It really shows how ruthless these smuggling networks are.
Yeah.
What kind of promises do they make to get people to take such huge risks?
It's all about the dream versus the reality.
Right.
Smugglers take advantage of people's desperation. They paint this perfect picture of life in the West. Easy money, tons of jobs, a welcoming society.
But it's not always like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The reality is often way harsher.
Right.
People might end up being exploited, stuck in low-paying jobs, living in fear of being deported.
It's that contrast between the expectation and what actually happens that really hit me hard in the source material.
I get that. The American dream is powerful.
Yeah.
But it's often twisted and used by people who profit from others' desperation.
Okay, so we've covered the journey, the cost, the personal stories, but what about the larger picture?
I mean, like, what causes this phenomenon and what can we do about it?
Yeah.
It gets even more complicated here. The source mentions the need for expert commentary, and they're right.
I agree.
We need economists to look at global inequality driving migration, political scientists to analyze conflict and instability, and sociologists to examine the social and cultural factors at play.
We can't forget about climate change either.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a huge factor in displacement and creating climate refugees.
So it's a really complex issue with no simple answers.
Definitely.
But the source did suggest some potential solutions.
Like what?
Creating safer legal ways for migration, addressing the root causes of poverty and inequality, and investing in sustainable development in those home countries.
Yeah, but those are long-term solutions.
Right.
They need international cooperation and political will.
Absolutely. It's easy to feel overwhelmed by how complicated it all is, but I think the source leaves us with a really powerful challenge.
Okay, what's that?
What's our role in fixing this situation?
Good question.
It starts with understanding what forces people to risk everything for a better life. Then we can ask ourselves, what can I do in my own little corner of the world to create a fairer world?
I think that's a question that really sticks with you even after you finish reading about all this.
It does. It makes you look beyond the headlines, see the real people behind the numbers, and realize we all share the responsibility to build a world where these desperate journeys are no longer needed.
That's the goal.
It
A
is.
world where Dunki flights aren't the only option.
Exactly.